Let me ask you something gently, without judgment. Have you ever caught yourself feeling uncomfortable just being you? Not doing anything wrong, not failing, not hurting anyone, just existing. Sitting quietly, breathing, and still feeling like something about you needs fixing. If that feeling is familiar, it didn't come from nowhere. People are not born hating themselves. No child enters the world believing they are a problem. Self-hatred is learned. And most of the time, it's not taught with cruelty, it's taught subtly, quietly, through tone, reactions, silence, expectations, through a world that responds to who you are in ways that slowly convince you that being yourself is unsafe. Many people think self-hatred looks dramatic. They imagine someone who openly despises themselves, someone constantly talking about how worthless they feel. But real self-hatred is often much quieter than that. It shows up as discomfort with praise, as guilt when resting, as the urge to apologize for having needs, as the habit of minimizing your pain because others have it worse. It shows up as pushing yourself harder than necessary, not because you believe in your potential, but because slowing down feels undeserved. It shows up when someone asks how you're doing, and you instinctively say, "I'm fine," even when something inside you feels heavy, tired, or unseen. For many people, self-hatred didn't begin with words. It began with patterns. A raised eyebrow when you spoke too much, a sigh when you expressed emotion, a comparison to someone else who was easier, quieter, more successful, more grateful. Maybe you grew up in a home where love wasn't withdrawn explicitly, but it felt conditional, where approval was strongest when you performed well, behaved correctly, didn't cause trouble, didn't take up too much space. Or maybe it was school, teachers who only noticed mistakes, systems that rewarded perfection and punished curiosity. Or maybe it was peers, media, culture, a world that constantly told you who you should be and made you feel lacking for being anything else. When a child grows up in an environment that feels emotionally unpredictable, the mind does something very intelligent. It looks for patterns. It tries to understand what leads to connection and what leads to rejection. And if love seems to appear when you behave a certain way and disappear when you don't, the lesson becomes internalized. The child doesn't think, "This environment is unhealthy." The child thinks, "I need to be different." Because believing the world is unsafe is terrifying. Believing you are the problem at least gives you something to work on, something to control. So the mind turns inward, and slowly self-criticism begins to feel like responsibility. This is how self-hatred often disguises itself as self-improvement. You tell yourself you're just being honest, just pushing yourself to be better, just holding yourself accountable. But notice the emotional tone. Is it supportive or is it harsh? Does it motivate you or does it make you feel small? Real growth doesn't require cruelty. But many people were never taught that. They learned that pressure equals progress, that rest is laziness, that sensitivity is weakness, that mistakes are embarrassing. So they adopt an inner voice that sounds suspiciously like the voices they grew up with. Critical, demanding, never satisfied. Psychologically, this is not a flaw, it's adaptation. The nervous system learns what it must do to stay connected. If being quiet kept you safe, you became quiet. If being perfect earned approval, you chased perfection. If anticipating others' needs prevented conflict, you became hyper-aware. These strategies work in childhood. They help you survive emotionally. But when carried into adulthood, they turn inward. The world that once judged you no longer has to. You do it for them. Many people who hate themselves are deeply empathetic. They notice others' emotions instantly. They feel shifts in energy, changes in tone, unspoken tension. But that awareness is not used gently. It's used defensively. The mind is constantly scanning. Did I say something wrong? Was I too much? Did I disappoint someone? This isn't self-awareness, it's hypervigilance. And it's exhausting. Living this way means you're always slightly braced, even in calm moments, even when nothing is wrong. There's a particular loneliness that comes with this, because when you're constantly adjusting yourself to fit the environment, people don't actually meet you. They meet the version of you that feels safest to present. You may be liked, respected, appreciated, but still feel unseen. Because being seen requires letting parts of yourself exist without editing. And that feels dangerous when you've learned that authenticity comes with consequences. Self-hatred also thrives on comparison, not because you're shallow or insecure, but because you were taught that worth is relative. Someone else is always doing better, coping better, healing faster, living more correctly. And instead of seeing differences, the mind interprets hierarchy. If others seem ahead, you must be behind. And being behind feels like failure. So you push harder, judge yourself more harshly, tell yourself you'll finally accept who you are once you reach some invisible standard. But that standard keeps moving, because it was never about becoming enough. It was about not being rejected. What makes this especially painful is that many people don't even recognize self-hatred as self-hatred. They think they're just realistic, or disciplined, or humble. They don't realize how often they dismiss their own feelings, how quickly they invalidate their own pain, how rarely they speak to themselves with the same understanding they offer everyone else. They would never talk to a friend the way they talk to themselves. But when it comes to their own inner world, kindness feels undeserved. The world reinforces this. It praises toughness, productivity, emotional control. It romanticizes resilience without acknowledging the cost. So people learn to suppress instead of process, to endure instead of feel, to function instead of heal. And when emotions eventually surface, as they always do, they feel overwhelming, shameful, like proof that something is wrong with you. But emotions don't mean you're broken. They mean you're human. The problem is not that you feel deeply. The problem is that you were taught not to. Another layer of self-hatred forms when a person's reality is repeatedly invalidated. When you express hurt and are told you're overreacting. When you name discomfort and are told to be grateful. When your boundaries are ignored and you're made to feel selfish for having them. Over time, you stop trusting your own perceptions. You begin to question your instincts. You gaslight yourself before anyone else can. And that internal mistrust creates distance from yourself. You don't feel like an ally to your own experience. You feel like an enemy. This is why self-hatred often coexists with competence. Many people who dislike themselves are capable, intelligent, high-achieving. They appear strong, put together, responsible. But internally, they feel like they're constantly falling short. No amount of achievement brings relief. Because achievements don't heal emotional wounds. They distract from them. And when the distraction fades, the same emptiness returns. Healing doesn't begin with loving yourself overnight. That idea often feels impossible and alienating. Healing begins with neutrality, with curiosity, with noticing the patterns without attacking yourself for having them. It begins with recognizing that your inner voice learned its language somewhere, that it's repeating messages it once believed were necessary, that it was trying to protect you, even if it hurts you now. There is grief in this process, grief for the child who learned to dislike themselves in order to belong, grief for the softness that was never allowed, grief for the needs that were dismissed. This grief doesn't make you weak, it makes you honest, and honesty is the foundation of change. Slowly, as awareness grows, something shifts. The self-hatred doesn't disappear all at once, but it loosens. You begin to catch yourself before spiraling into criticism. You pause, you breathe, you ask different questions. Instead of "what's wrong with me?" you ask "what happened to me?" Instead of "why am I like this?" you ask "what am I protecting?" These questions change everything because they replace judgment with understanding. The world may have taught you to hate yourself, but it doesn't get to decide the rest of your story. You are not broken. You are shaped. and what was shaped can be reshaped. Not by force, not by pressure, but by compassion, by patience, by choosing again and, again, not to abandon yourself. You don't need to become someone else to be worthy. You don't need to erase your sensitivity, your depth, your emotions. Those were never the problem. The problem was a world that didn't know how to hold them. And now, slowly, you are learning to be the one who does. And maybe that's where healing really begins. Not in becoming perfect, not in proving your value, but in standing quietly with yourself and realizing that you were never the enemy. You were just doing your best in a world that asked too much, explained too little, and taught you to turn against yourself to survive. And the moment you stop doing that, even briefly, even imperfectly, something powerful happens. You come home to yourself. And for the first time, you're not fighting, you're listening. And that changes everything.